Welcome CAD 100, hundreds, or DFT 122s, or whoever you may be, to Lesson 3, coming from Chapter 5 of your text. Now, you may have a different version of the text, new edition, but essentially the material will primarily be the same. Chapter 5 dealing with line standards, layers, and basic plotting. And what we'll kind of work on in this is some of the concepts behind lines and layers and what we do with them and how they all work so that we can get a better understanding of just simple setting up details and better drawings. We're not going to do a lot of drawing during this lesson. We are going to do a lot of setting changes and a lot of understanding of new material. So pay close attention, have your book ready to go, make some notes in your book, and we'll demonstrate using the CAD system, the AutoCAD system, but we'll be, like I said, doing a lot of shape drawing and those kind of things. First off, the best thing for you to understand is that lines come with standards. You don't just draw a line and that's it. There's all kinds of different lines. For example, next page, we see the standards associated with line commands. There you go. For example, if we look at this figure, we see that it says a visible object line is thick. Then we have something called a center line, then something called a chain line, a dimension line, a cutting line plane, section views, a hidden line, a phantom line, a section line. Now, you might just call this a regular line, a dashed line, some kind of broken line, and then you might know this is a center line. And that's okay if you do or you don't. We're going to cover what these lines actually represent later on. But we do need to know that there are different types, or different what we call line types. Things like regular, continuous, hidden, center, phantom. All that information is going to be very much important to us later on. So keep this page handy and mark it down as line types. And just the basic understanding, when I may call out for a center line, this is where you run to figure out what it is. Like I said, in the next chapter, or some of the other lessons down the line, we'll talk about how you use them correctly in representation. But here you need to understand that there are different types and there's ways to set them. So take a look at that page and the information that's provided, and then read over this handy little table that describes features and how they are used basically in written format. We'll practice on how to use them later on. So mark this page, keep it in mind. Another page that we'll kind of refer back to later on is this example, where it shows the basic line types being used in different variations. What you see basically is some kind of part in a bunch of different or a part with a bunch of different lines shown and how they're used. For example, it shows a part with some kind of lever arm that has a motion to it. For example, it just doesn't stay here. This whole lever arm comes this way. And it shows a center line representing the way that this point travels from point A to point B as this arm moves. It also shows the arm itself in a stationary fixed position, and then shows it in its other position as it moves along. So this would be the arm at rest, this would be it in motion. And we also use a phantom line to represent the object's secondary position. Again, we'll talk about that later on. Just keep this page in reference and understand line types. Now, with all this information comes the concept of the layers and what layers are. So let's take a moment and discuss a layer. Okay, here is an example of a basic house plan that has been provided that I did years and years ago, and we're going to use the justification for what we refer to as layers. Now, just to give you a little quick orientation, let's take a look at the bathroom area up here. Okay. Now, the bathroom area has some doors obviously coming into a little closet, little sink, tub, sink's over here. Granted, you're probably seeing a very stretched screen, but that's just because of the pixel sizing I have, so that's easy to produce videos from. But you see a couple things like the electrical switches. You see a light switch, a fan, electrical feature here, the toilets, the tub itself. And in terms of layers, it's oftentimes necessary to take away some of the crowding of drawings so you can put in certain information. For example, if we had a builder who was going to work on this project, he wouldn't, or a carpenter specifically, he wouldn't necessarily be so interested in the electrical components of the system, nor even really the plumbing as much. But he would be interested in the locations of walls and doors, and we would need to show dimensions. Well, to handle that and make this drawing less cluttered, we have layers that allow us to turn certain features off and on. For example, I will turn off the electrical lights and plugs. Now, and miss the wires, let me take care of that too while I'm at it. Now he can easily see just the tub, the toilet, and the sink, and not have to worry about the other details. In fact, we could even turn off that information so that it's not in the way. Figure where it is first. There it is. And that way he could come in and just design or worry about this information to start off with, and then the information can be worried about somebody else. So the point of all this is layers allow us to turn things off and on. Now keep in mind this information is not deleted. The information is still here. For example, I can turn all this back on just the way it was. And the furniture too. And take it back to the format that it was without any problem. So it just creates a cleaner screen for us to work with and a cleaner drawing and isolate certain features. Things we want in one case, things we don't want in another. So that's the beauty of layers. Otherwise, you just have all this stuff packed on top of each other and therefore very confusing. So layers save us time. And oftentimes, a good set of drawings will have a great deal of layers on it. So that's the purpose of layers, is to help us isolate and control specific components of drawings and make the drawings easier to manipulate. Now for us, we're going to start off with our own new file and take care of it ourselves. So let's begin. Hit a brand new file, and let's do a ACAD name plot styles. Open. You can go ahead and open one up for yourself. We'll start off with a brand new file and kind of get ourselves going. So let's take a look at some of the toolbars before we get, the panels, tool panels. First off, we'll primarily work from the Home ribbon right now as we get started. And we will be focusing on the Layers panel as you see here. Now don't forget you can rearrange these panels just by clicking and dragging to different positions. I typically like to have the layers over on the far left and draw to this side of it. And then let's say the properties will also be here as well. So there we go. That's good orientation. Actually, I take that back. Let's move the layers to the middle so you can see it pretty easy on your screen. There we go. Now, if you run into a situation where you just have these panels just kind of isolated and they're not showing you the tools, just kind of click it and drag it around to a different position until it pops back up full size. Okay? So we've got the Properties panel here, and we have the Layers panel. And we will discuss the properties a little bit later on, because it's kind of a one-shot deal. But the Layers panel will have all kinds of useful tools for us that we're going to get to liking and spend a lot of time with. Okay, first, let me draw your attention to what you see in this bar here. You see the white box, the 0, a padlock, a little sun, and a light bulb. Each of these are tools that you can basically make adjustments to and help identify which layer you're on. Currently, we are on the 0 layer. Okay, that's the name of this layer, 0. It's the default layer. It comes up on everybody's brand new file. We'll create more beyond this, but it's our starting point. Now the next tool that we will really focus on is the Layer Properties Manager. Up on the far left, right above the Layers bar itself, and you can just click on or hold your cursor on, you can identify its name. Now don't forget that you can easily identify tools just by holding your cursor on them and waiting a second to identify what the particular item is. I'm going to go ahead and click the Layer Properties Manager, or just Layer Properties as it's called. It used to be called the Layer Properties Manager. And this window is going to pop up on my screen. It's an important window, and while we're here, let's experiment with some of these windows that pop up. First off, notice that I can click on the gray area here, and I can drag, and I can move things around. Also note that when I'm over in the gray area, I can right-click on it, and I can make changes. For example, I can turn off Allow Docking. and therefore it's kind of a free floating tool. Also note that I can right click on the gray area and I can switch it to transparency. Okay, never mind that. I can't demonstrate it for you, but you can do it. It just makes the window transparent. Or I can use auto hide, which means if I take my cursor away from this little window, it just becomes the bar until I put my cursor on the window again. I don't really like that, so I'll turn mine back off. But I do like the option of keeping the allow docking unchecked. That makes it better for us. Now, let's take a look at some of these little features. First off, notice that if I move my cursor in between this little gray bar here and it's a divider, you can click and drag and reduce the size of one window or the other. And we will probably find that pretty useful later on. A couple of things about this window that's going to tell us right off the bat is that our current layer is layer 0, which is the only layer, so it makes sense. It allows us to do a search for layer, but that only kicks in when you have a bunch of layers. So our biggest features are the features that are shown up right here, and also the tools right here, these 4 tools that you see. Primarily, the new layer option as you see there. Just for identification, this is the layers filter tree, which allows us, if we had like 50 or 60 layers, it would allow us to use filters to control what we actually see so we can sort through faster. Basically, it's a sorting tool. Okay? Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get into creating a new layer. First off, I'm going to hit this button here that you see. It's got the little sheet and the star with it, not the sheet and the star and the ice, or the snowflake, the sheet and just the star. The first one on the left. I click it, and suddenly a new layer appears, highlighted in blue, and starts off with the name. So let's start off with naming it, caps lock obviously. Let's call it, let's just call it red. Okay, hit enter. Once you've hit enter, it accepts the name of the layer, and basically you have a new layer created. So that's pretty cool. Now, the next thing is, look at all these little features that exist on the layer. In fact, you can use your scroll bar to scroll across and see some other tools. Each of these little icons represents a setting associated with this layer. For example, if I want the layer not to show up on the screen, I would click this to turn it off. Obviously, we want it to show up on the screen for right now. Also, we have the freeze and thaw, which we'll deal with that later, the locking tool. Now, just a quick explanation, when a layer is locked, anything that you create with that layer cannot be deleted or taken away. So typically we don't do that very often because we're never to the point where we're just completely done modifying. So we leave it unlocked. But sometimes people accidentally click on this and lock layers and they can't figure out why they can't have control of that layer. Now the first real big one that we're going to be interested in is this little box here where it says white. That is, of course, the color option. Now notice that I'm about to click on this box, and when I do, another little window pops up and allows me to change the color of this layer. So I can go through this chart and pick on any one of these colors that I want to be the layer selection, or I can go to the true color wavelength table, I guess you'd call it, where I can pick on any color in existence, or I can go to the color books, which allows me to select any color from actual colors produced by paint companies. I mean, this is where you can get just about any color from the list you can imagine and scroll up and down their color charts. So if you actually were doing it for the purpose of seeing what a wall would look like in your house, you can come to this and probably find the exact color you're interested in. Which, that's pretty neat when you think about it, being able to do that. Okay? We'll just keep it on the basic index color for quick and easy processes. And I'll switch it to perhaps the green. Now you have your base greens and base colors here, and then you have your more derivative colors. So any one of these will work very well. Maybe magenta, whatever you like. Typically you try to want to avoid the grays and blacks because we're dealing with a black screen for right now. So pick vivid colors. Alright, so I'll stay with, we'll do green, that'll be fun. And I hit OK. And now notice that the color for this layer, the layer I named red, is now green. Since it's red, let's actually name it, or actually have the same color, so we'll call it red. So red has a red color to it. And then we come to the line type category. Now line type is what controls whether it's a hidden or center or dashed or phantom or whatever. To change it, you simply just click on the word. And you have the continuous line as an option. But obviously we want more line types than this. So I'm going to hit the load button. And I'm going to go down through and I will pick out another type of line, perhaps a center line. I then hit center again and hit OK. And now this layer has a center line. Now the line weight we will talk about later on in terms of how to use that. Plot style, again, talk about that later on. So our big ones are, make sure this is on, light bulb's lit, choose a color, choose a line type, give it a name. Once we are done, we simply close this little window and we're back in ModelSpace. Now, watch what happens when I draw a line. Well, first of all, notice that the line is not a center line, nor is it red. What's the problem? Well, hopefully you realize that I'm still on the 0 layer. You see, even though I created this other layer, I'm still on the 0. So therefore, I've got a problem. So I have to switch to the layer that I just created. Here's how you do that. Watch. Take your cursor, come to the little down arrow, click, and then you get to select between the two. This time I'll take my cursor and select red. And now I draw a line, and look. Not only is it red, but when we zoom in closely, we can tell it's a center line. A center line is identified by long dash, space, short dash, space, long dash. There it is. While we're working on this, better go ahead and make a 6-unit line so we can visibly tell about how big we're drawing things. And we'll talk about why that's important later on. So check it out. There is a line created with the 0 layer. There's a line created with the red layer. But let's say that I decide that the red layer is just not a good name. Let's go back and change it. Go back to your Layers Manager. Click on the word red right here. Not the color, but the actual name. Click on it. And then click on it again. And let's change it to Layer 1. And hit Enter. Now it's called Layer 1. You can also change its name by right-clicking on the name and just say renaming layer. Right there it is the option. Once I've done that, I hit close, and layer 1 is now identified as layer 1. Alright, now, here's what you want to do. You want to pause the video, or you can rewind, but you need to do this exact process that I've done. Now, if you've been following along doing it, that's great. But you should have a new layer called layer 1. It should be red, and it should be set to a center line type. Now, if you're seeing a line and it's not showing up correctly, like let's say I draw a line here, from back here it doesn't look like a center. The reason is I'm just too far away. That's why we drew the little 6-inch line so we can kind of get an idea of how big we're drawing when we're just playing around. Okay? So make sure you do that as well. But we need a layer called layer 1. It's visible, it's set to the current layer, and it's a center line. Pause the video and make that happen. Alright, after being successful at that, let's do it all over again. This time, let's create some more layers. We'll go back to the Layers Manager, we'll hit the New button, and we'll create Layer 2. Notice again, all capital letters, no lowercase in this class. We will also change the color from red to, let's go to green this time, and we will change the line type from center to one of the others. Now notice again that there's not a lot of tools in here, so we're going to hit the load button and pick a different line from the list. Also note that we rarely select these ACAD type line types. We go down to the good old-fashioned names. For example, let's go to the one called Hidden. You also notice that there's a Hidden 2 and a Hidden times 2, or Hidden x2. Right now we'll just select the regular size Hidden. Hit OK. And keep in mind that even though we hit OK there, we still have to come out and select it here as well. If you just click it down there and hit OK, and then come out here and hit OK out here, it won't select unless it's selected here. You can always check by coming to this part of the layer and determining if it says the correct line type that you're going for. Color is green, line type's hidden, we close it back down, and then we start drawing a line. Once again, I made the mistake of not changing my layer to use the one that's current. So I click on the down arrow at this point, click, select layer 2, then draw the line. And sure enough, not only do I have a green layer, but I have a green layer producing hidden lines. And again, hidden lines are represented by these dashes. Note, I did not select the dash lines. I selected the one called hidden and center. Let's try another one. We'll call it layer 3. We would change the green to a different color. Magenta will be fine. And we'll change hidden to, let's go for a phantom line. I go to load, scroll down, find phantom, hit OK, select phantom in here, hit OK, and close by hitting the X over on the corner. Switch to the layer 3 now. Click, line, start drawing. Sure enough, there it is. That cool phantom line. Phantom lines are distinguished by long break, space, short break, space, short break, space, long break, or long portion. Alright, now you try. Make sure that you create another 2 layers. Make it green, magenta, make one line type hidden, one line type phantom, and carry on. Good luck. Alright. Now let's study some of the other settings associated with these layers. First off, I'll go back to the Layers Property Manager, and I will kind of scroll over and take a look at some of these other features. For example, there's line weight and there's plot style. For right now, we will leave plot style set to normal, but we will take a look at the line weight. To change the line weight for this layer, I simply click on the word default here, and this little window pops up. Now, what this all means is how thick does the line show up when you print it out. Now this thickness change will not show up in CAD, so I don't really bother demonstrating it at this point. But when you actually produce a print or electronic paper print, you can see a difference. For example, you can see one line could be this thick and one line could be this thin. Either way. So when we start changing line weight, we would simply click on the word default and change the values here, or whatever word or value it happens to be. Now I also want to draw your attention to this little printer icon. You see this? Notice what happens when I click on it. It's got a little red slash. You may not be able to see it, but basically when you click on it, it slashes the printer, which means it won't print. Now that'll come in handy later on when we start talking about plotting and printing. Okay? So, you should have 3 new layers on there, all with different colors and different line types. And here's what I want you to do for a quick exercise. I want you to add 2 more layers, layer 4, layer 5. Give them color of blue and perhaps yellow. And then change their line type. Perhaps use a zigzag line and a fence line. So give that a try real fast, create a new layer, and then go out and draw with the lines out of model space. Do that as an exercise, and then check out your next video.